Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Imagine waking up to 10,000 notifications, and every single one of them is from someone who hates you. One mistake, one post, and suddenly the whole world wants to cancel you. Welcome to Glisso. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a 10-chapter story called The Cancel Fear. This isn't just a story, it's a way for you to master real-life English vocabulary while exploring the digital world we live in today. As you listen, pay attention to words like viral, backlash, and refresh. These are essential terms for understanding modern social media. By the end of this series, you'll not only know Maya's fate, but you'll have the tools to talk about the internet like a native speaker. Turn off your notifications, grab a coffee, and let's begin. The blue light from the smartphone screen was the only thing illuminating Maya's darkened bedroom. It was 11:15 p.m., that quiet time of night when the rest of the world seems to go silent. Maya was scrolling through her feed, half asleep, when she saw a trending topic about a local charity event. Without thinking too deeply, she typed out a quick, sarcastic joke. In her head, it sounded clever. It sounded like the kind of sharp humor her friends usually laughed at. She didn't check her phrasing. She didn't consider how a stranger might interpret her words. She simply tapped the vibrant post button and tossed her phone onto the nightstand. "Done," she whispered to herself, pulling the duvet up to her chin. She expected to wake up to a few dozen likes and maybe a funny comment from her brother. She closed her eyes, but she didn't even have time to drift off before the first vibration happened. Buzz. A few seconds passed. Buzz. Buzz. Maya frowned. That was fast. She reached out and tapped the screen. One notification appeared. "Wow, Maya, I didn't think you were that kind of person." Her stomach did a small flip. "What does that mean?" she wondered aloud. She opened the app to reply, but before she could type a single letter, the screen began to jump. The notification bell at the bottom of the app started flashing red. 5 new comments, 10, 20. The share count was climbing. People weren't just reading her post, they were sending it to their friends. They were quoting her joke and adding their own angry captions. Phrases like insensitive, out of touch, and canceled began to fill her screen in a relentless, scrolling wall of text. Maya sat up straight in bed, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The room felt colder. She realized with a sudden, sickening clarity that she hadn't made a joke, she had made a massive mistake, and now thousands of strangers were starting to notice. The night was no longer quiet. The digital world had just walked into her bedroom, and it was screaming. Maya's thumb hovered over the screen. Her first instinct was to delete the post. "If I just delete it, it will go away," she whispered, her voice trembling. She tapped the 3 little dots in the corner of her post and hit delete. The screen refreshed. The post was gone. For a single blissful second, Maya felt a wave of relief. She exhaled, leaning back against her headboard. But the relief lasted only a moment. Her phone buzzed again. Then it buzzed twice more, a sharp metallic sound against her wooden nightstand. She opened her direct messages. Someone had sent her a screenshot. It was her post, the joke she had just deleted, but now it was a permanent image. Underneath it, a stranger had written, "Too late, Maya. We saw it. You can't hide who you really are by deleting a post." The first ripple had become a wave. Maya felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. She realized then that the internet doesn't have an undo button. Even though the original post was gone, the screenshot was traveling across different platforms. People were tagging her. They were looking up her profile. They were finding her Instagram, her LinkedIn, even the small blog she hadn't updated in 2 years. She watched as her follower count began to drop. 100, 95, 80.
Each unfollow felt like a door slamming in her face. But worse than the people leaving were the people arriving. Total strangers were leaving comments on her old photos, photos of her cat, photos of her graduation. "You look so happy here for someone so cruel," one comment read. Maya's room, which usually felt like a sanctuary, now felt exposed. It was as if the walls had turned to glass and thousands of angry eyes were peering in. She tried to put the phone face down, but the light from the screen bled out from the edges, blinking every time a new notification arrived. She was no longer just a person in a room. She was a topic. She was a scandal. And the most frightening part? The night was still young. The world on the other side of the globe was just waking up, and they were ready to join the conversation.
By 1 a.m., Maya realized she wasn't just dealing with a few angry neighbors or classmates. She had officially gone viral. In the world of social media, going viral is usually a dream. It means fame, views, and success. But for Maya, it was a living nightmare. She watched as a famous influencer, someone with 2 million followers, reposted her deleted joke with a single word: disgusting. Within minutes, the numbers on Maya's screen began to spin like a broken slot machine. Her phone became hot to the touch. The vibrations were so constant that they turned into a single low hum. She felt a strange sense of detachment. It was as if she were watching a movie about someone else. Could this really be happening? Was she really the most hated person on the internet right now? She clicked on a trending hashtag and saw her own name, #MayaCanceled. Underneath the tag, thousands of people were debating her character. Some were calling for her to be fired from her job. Others were digging into her past, trying to find more evidence that she was a bad person. "They don't even know me," she whispered, her eyes stinging from the blue light. "They're talking about a version of me that doesn't exist." This is the power of the global village. While Maya sat alone in her pajamas in a small apartment, people in London, Tokyo, and New York were weighing in on her life. Language barriers didn't seem to matter. The emotion of outrage is universal, and it was spreading faster than any virus. She saw a meme someone had made of her profile picture. They had distorted her face to make her look like a villain. Seeing her own face twisted into a monster made her feel physically sick. She ran to the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. But even without her phone, she could still feel the weight of a million eyes. She looked in the mirror. She looked the same, pale, tired, and scared. But to the rest of the world, she was no longer a human being. She was a target. Maya told herself to put the phone away. She tried to hide it under her pillow. She even tried to leave it in the kitchen, walking back to her bedroom and closing the door firmly. But the silence of the room was louder than the noise of the notifications. She lasted exactly 4 minutes. The refresh habit is a powerful thing. It's the constant, twitchy need to pull down on the screen to see what's new, even if what's new is painful. It's like a person who can't stop touching a bruise just to see if it still hurts. Maya's thumb moved instinctively. Pull down, release, spin. New comments appeared instantly. The internet doesn't sleep, and it definitely doesn't move on quickly. Every time the screen refreshed, Maya felt a small jolt of adrenaline, but it wasn't the good kind. It was the kind of adrenaline that makes your hands shake and your breath shallow. She began to recognize the patterns of the mob. There were the attackers, who used insults and harsh language. There were the judges, who wrote long, serious paragraphs about why her joke was socially dangerous. And then there were the observers, people who just watched, tagging their friends to come and see the train wreck. "Why am I doing this to myself?" she whispered.
Her eyes were red and dry, strained from hours of staring at the LED screen. She was looking for one thing, a defense. She was desperately searching the comments for a single person to say, hey, maybe she just made a mistake. Maybe we should calm down. But in the world of a cancel storm, voices of reason are often the quietest. Anyone who tried to defend Maya was immediately attacked themselves. Compassion was being drowned out by the roar of the crowd. Maya realized she was addicted to her own destruction. She was feeding her fear by reading every word, every insult, and every threat. The refresh button wasn't giving her information anymore. It was giving her a sentence of guilt over and over again. The clock on her wall ticked. 2:30 a.m. Outside, a car drove by, its headlights sweeping across her ceiling. For a second, she envied the driver. They were just living a normal life, unaware that a girl in a dark room nearby was watching her entire reputation burn down in the palm of her hand.
By 3:15 a.m., the individual comments began to blur together into a single roaring noise. Maya realized that she wasn't being judged by people. At least they didn't feel like people anymore. She was being judged by avatars. Most of the accounts attacking her didn't have faces. They had pictures of anime characters, landscapes, or simply the default gray circle of a new user. These were the faceless crowd. There was a strange, cold bravery that comes with anonymity. Behind a screen, without a name or a face, a person can say things they would never dream of saying to someone standing in front of them in a grocery store. Maya looked at a particularly cruel comment. "I hope you never find a job again." She clicked on the profile. The user had no bio, no posts, and only 3 followers. It was a ghost account, created perhaps only to spread negativity. "Who are you?" Maya whispered to the empty room. "Are you a student? A father? A grandmother?" The disconnect was terrifying. In the real world, if 100 people gathered outside Maya's window to shout at her, she would call the police. She would see their expressions. She might even see a flicker of hesitation or regret in some of their eyes. But online, there is no hesitation. There is only the send button. The faceless crowd has a specific kind of mob mentality. They feed off each other's energy. One person throws a stone, and 1,000 others feel they have the permission or even the duty to throw one too. They weren't just angry at Maya. They were performing their anger for each other. They wanted likes on their insults. They wanted to be seen as the most moral or the most righteous person in the thread. Maya felt like a character in a video game who had run out of lives. She wasn't Maya anymore. She was a symbol of something people hated. She walked over to her window and looked out at the streetlights. Somewhere out there, in the dark houses of her city, were some of these people. Maybe the person who called her a monster lived only 2 blocks away. Maybe they were drinking a glass of water right now, completely unaware that their 5-second comment had left Maya shaking in the dark. The distance between the digital world and the physical world felt like a thin, breaking wire, and Maya was balanced right in the middle of it. By 4 a.m., the weight of the silence in Maya's room was unbearable. She felt she had to do something, anything, to stop the bleeding. "I'll apologize," she thought. "If I just explain what I meant, they'll understand. They'll see that I'm not a monster." She opened a fresh note on her phone. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, shaking slightly. How do you start an apology to 1,000,000 strangers? "I'm sorry," she typed. She paused. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." She read it back. It felt weak. It felt like a child apologizing for breaking a vase. She deleted it. "To whom it may concern," she tried again. No, that was too formal.
It sounded like a corporate email. She deleted that, too. Maya was discovering the apology trap. In the digital age, an apology is often seen as a confession of guilt. If she apologized, she was admitting she was wrong. But if she didn't apologize, she was seen as arrogant and heartless. It felt like a lose-lose situation. She spent the next hour meticulously choosing her words. She looked up synonyms for regret and misunderstanding. She tried to strike a balance between being sincere and being defensive. "I want to address the post I made earlier tonight," she wrote. "It was a lapse in judgment. I realize now that my words were insensitive, and I am deeply sorry for the pain I have caused." She read it over 10 times. Her eyes were blurry with exhaustion. To her, it sounded honest. It sounded like the truth. But as she moved her thumb toward the post button, a new fear stopped her cold. She remembered seeing other cancel apologies. She remembered how the crowd had torn them apart, calling them fake, scripted, or too late, too little. She realized that in the heat of an internet storm, people don't want an explanation. They want a scapegoat. They want someone to stay bad so they can continue to feel good by attacking them. Maya stared at her carefully crafted words. The cursor blinked steadily, like a ticking heart. If she posted this, would the fire go out, or would it just give the crowd more fuel to burn? She looked at the post button. It felt like a trigger. One tap, and she would be back in the center of the arena. She closed the app and dropped her phone on the bed. The apology stayed in her notes, a ghost of a conversation that might never happen.
The clock on Maya's nightstand turned to 4:45 a.m. The sky outside was still a deep, bruised purple, but the first hints of dawn were beginning to appear on the horizon. Maya felt like she had aged 10 years in a single night. Suddenly, her phone didn't just buzz, it sang. A ringtone, a bright, cheerful melody she had assigned to only one person. Incoming call, Sarah. Maya hesitated. Sarah was her best friend since primary school. They had shared everything, secrets, clothes, and heartbreaks. But did Sarah know? Had she seen the comments? Was she calling to tell Maya that their friendship was over too? With a trembling hand, Maya swiped accept. "Maya?" Sarah's voice was thick with sleep, but urgent. "I just woke up and saw my feed. Are you okay?" The sound of a familiar, human voice cracked the wall of Maya's isolation. She tried to speak, but her throat was dry. A sob escaped her instead. "Sarah, I didn't mean the joke. Everyone is so angry." "Listen to me," Sarah said, her voice firm and grounding. "Put the phone down, right now." "I can't," Maya whispered. "They're saying I should lose my job. They're calling me a monster." "Maya, look at me." "Well, listen to me," Sarah corrected herself. "The people on the internet don't know you. They know a screenshot. They know a sentence. They don't know the girl who volunteers at the animal shelter or the friend who stayed up all night with me when my grandmother passed away." "But there are thousands of them," Maya argued. "And they are thousands of strangers who will find something else to talk about by tomorrow afternoon. To them, this is entertainment. To you, it's your life. Don't let their entertainment become your reality." For the first time that night, Maya took a deep, full breath. The voice of reason was like an anchor in a storm. Sarah wasn't excusing the mistake. She knew Maya had been careless, but she was reminding Maya that a single mistake doesn't erase a whole person. "I'm coming over," Sarah said. "I'm bringing coffee, and we're going to delete the apps for a few days. We're going to sit in the real world for a while." Maya looked at her phone. The notification light was still blinking, but for the first time, she didn't feel the urge to check it. The digital fire was still burning, but Sarah had just handed her a glass of water.
Even with Sarah's supportive voice still echoing in her mind, Maya hit what she would later call the midnight peak. It is that moment in a crisis where the adrenaline finally runs out, leaving only a hollow, bone-deep exhaustion. It was 5:15 a.m. This is the hour when the world feels most surreal. The air in Maya's room felt heavy, and the blue light of her phone now felt like a physical weight against her eyes. She felt drained, emotionally, mentally, and physically. She made the mistake of checking one last time. The cancel storm had reached its peak. A minor celebrity had commented on the situation, and now the story was being picked up by small news blogs. The headlines were sensational. Local girl faces backlash over offensive post. Seeing her name in a headline made Maya's stomach churn. To the internet, she wasn't a girl anymore. She was a story. She was content. People were using her mistake to argue about politics, society, and morality. She had become a tiny piece in a much larger, angrier game. She felt a wave of nausea. The peak of the storm is the loudest point, but it is also the most lonely. She realized that even if she explained herself 1,000 times, the internet had already moved on to the next stage, the judgment. She looked at her bed, which was covered in tangled blankets. She looked at her desk, where a half-finished cup of tea had grown cold and filmed over. These were the real things in her life. Why did the virtual things feel so much more powerful? "I am more than a screen," she whispered. She stood up, her legs feeling like lead. She walked to her dresser and did something she should have done hours ago. She didn't just close the apps. She didn't just turn off the screen. She held the power button until the screen went completely black. The silence that followed was deafening. Without the constant hum of notifications, the room felt cavernous. The midnight peak had passed. The worst of the storm had happened, and she was still standing. She was broken, she was scared, and she was deeply ashamed, but she was still breathing. She crawled back into bed, not to sleep, but to simply exist in the dark without the blue light. For the first time in 6 hours, Maya wasn't looking at the world, and the world, at least the digital one, couldn't look back at her.
At 6:30 a.m., the first real sliver of golden sunlight cut through the gap in Maya's curtains. It landed on her carpet, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air. For the last 7 hours, Maya's entire universe had been 5 inches wide, the size of her phone screen. But as the sun rose, the world began to expand again. She heard a bird chirp outside, then another. A neighbor's garage door opened with a distant mechanical groan. A dog barked a few houses away. These were the sounds of a world that didn't know about her scandal. To the birds and the neighbors, today was just Monday. The sun doesn't care about trending topics, and the wind doesn't blow any differently because of a deleted post. This realization brought a strange, painful comfort. Maya felt insignificant, and in this moment, insignificance was a gift. She walked to the window and pulled the curtains wide. The light hurt her eyes, but she didn't look away. She watched a woman jogging down the street, headphones in, lost in her own thoughts. She watched a school bus turn the corner. None of these people were thinking about Maya. To the digital crowd, she was the center of a storm. To the real world, she was just a girl standing at a window in her pajamas. However, the morning light also brought a sober reality. The night was over, but the aftermath was just beginning. Maya knew she would have to face her boss. She would have to explain herself to her parents. She would have to deal with the friends who haven't called. The cancel fear is often the fear of the unknown, but in the morning, the unknown becomes a list of tasks. Maya sat at her kitchen table and took a piece of paper and a pen. No screens, no keyboards, just ink and paper. She wrote down 3 names: her manager, her mother, and the charity she had accidentally offended. These were the only people whose opinions actually mattered. The thousands of avatars from the night before, they were already moving on to the next outrage. They were ghosts in a machine. Maya took a sip of cold water. Her head ached, and her heart was still heavy with remorse, but the paralyzing terror of the night had evaporated with the dew. She wasn't canceled. She was just a human being who had a very difficult day ahead of her, and for the first time since 11:15 p.m., she felt she could handle it.
A week had passed since the night of the blue light nightmare. For Maya, that week felt like a year. She had survived the difficult conversations. She had sat down with her manager and explained the context of her mistake. She had reached out to the charity she had offended, offering a sincere apology and several hours of her time as a volunteer. Some people had forgiven her instantly. Others had stayed cold. But the most surprising thing Maya discovered was how quickly the faceless crowd had disappeared. By Tuesday afternoon, they were angry at a famous actor. By Wednesday, they were obsessed with a new political scandal. By Friday, Maya's name was buried under 1 million new tweets, posts, and memes. The internet has a very short memory, but it leaves very deep scars on the people it targets. Maya sat on a park bench with Sarah. The sun was warm on her shoulders, and the sound of children playing nearby was 1 million miles away from the digital screaming she had heard just days ago. "Do you miss it?" Sarah asked, nodding toward Maya's pocket. Maya pulled out her phone. It was off. "I miss the connection," Maya admitted, "but I don't miss the noise. I realized that when I was scrolling, I wasn't really living. I was just waiting for someone else to tell me how to feel." She had learned a hard lesson about digital boundaries. She realized that the cancel fear is a ghost. It only has power if you give it your attention. If you stay in the dark room, the ghost is giant, but if you step into the sunlight, it shrinks. Maya looked at the screen of her phone. It was a black mirror reflecting her own face. She didn't look like a monster. She looked like a person who had made a mistake, learned from it, and grown stronger. "I think I'll leave it off for another hour," Maya said, slipping the phone back into her bag. She stood up and walked toward the trees. She wasn't checking her likes. She wasn't counting her followers. She was just Maya walking in a park, breathing the fresh air of a world that didn't need a Wi-Fi connection to be real. The log off wasn't just a button she pressed on an app. It was a choice she made for her own well-being. She was no longer a victim of the blue light. She was finally, truly back in control.
And that is the end of the cancel fear. Maya's journey reminds us that while the digital world is fast and loud, the real world and our real-life connections are what truly define us. But before you log off, I have a challenge for you. Did you catch all the new vocabulary from this story? Words like backlash, resilience, and anonymity? Head over to the Community tab or the Quiz section right here on my YouTube channel. I've posted a special quiz based on Maya's story. It's the best way to make sure these new English words stick in your memory forever. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed the story and subscribe to Glisso for more real-life English listening. I'll see you in the next chapter. Happy learning!